Hey there, friends. It's Bill MacDonald, the ELAR writing doctor. Today I wanted to share a strategy with you that's going to help students visualize a scene in a play or a poem, especially when they struggle with reading. Now, the question that we're going to look at only got 41% in English 1. That's typically for first-time testers, ninth graders. I'm working with a student and her mom, and I felt like this question and a couple other ones for editing, revising, and reading were kind of tricky. So I wanted to share with you the importance of reading things in the context of an entire passage or a poem or a play. So if I hold my hand up, you can see in the middle of my hand, that's called my palm. And so whenever you look at an entire passage, you're looking at an introduction, a body, a conclusion. If you're looking at a paragraph, you're looking at a topic sentence and the specific supporting sentences and the closing sentences. But sometimes they're going to ask you to read a poem or a play, and we've got to figure out how a specific stanza or scene or selection or section fit into the whole play. So what I want to show you before we begin is a reminder of our transition that's going to happen to open-ended next year. And I want to remind you that life happens at full speed, but reading and writing happen in slow motion. We've got to slow life down. We can't be looking at an entire passage if we struggle with reading a paragraph. We can't look at an entire paragraph if we're at the sentence level. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with where the question is. And for those of you that already have the 1, 2, 3 with WWE, how to get a 1? It's a red W. Reminder, the red W is, what is the question? What is the topic about? Okay, and when you're looking at regular questions, and many prompts for that matter, you're going to find words like what, who, when, where, why, which, or how. They're going to ask us a question, and in order to get the one, the red light, we have to be able to say the answer to the question. Okay, and some of us are saying that we need to restate or repeat. So I have that option for you guys that you can use some of the words, but I want you to notice that as part of my guide, that it says it does not mean that I have to restate and repeat the question and prompt several times. Repetition is not a good way to answer. Okay, and since we're only trying to worry about getting 1 point today, all we're going to have to do is look here at the parentheses. When we move into constructive response, it'll be as a number, which is onto a grid like we're already doing for math, a symbol, a word, equation in math or an inequality, and reading and science and social studies, it could be a phrase or a sentence. It could be a table, graph, multi-part answer, cause and effect, compare, contrast, a drag and a drop where the answer is there and you just kind of drag it and drop it into a specific spot. So in this passage that we're going to look at, this question, the answer could be a drag and drop, but it happens to be a multiple choice. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it up so you can't see the answers yet by covering up the answers. So this question in ninth grade, I said, look for the words who, what, when, where, why, which, how, and this happens to be how. How do lines 15 through 20 function in the poem Sybil Ludington's Ride? And so if the poem is titled Sybil Ludington's Ride, then I would imagine that lines 15 through 20 better function somehow in the poem relative to our topic, our title, which is the ride that this person named Sybil Ludington took. But as you can tell, a lot of students struggled with this question. Not even half of the ninth graders in Texas or the 10th, 11th, or 12th graders who took this spring test got it correct. And what I'm going to show you is if they only look at the lines they were asking about, lines 15 through 20, but don't do what I call the Michael Jackson moonwalk and rewind to the lines beforehand, or the Michael J. Fox Back to the Future, go forward, then we won't be able to see the entire context. So let me show you using my read-vising graphic organizer. It said lines 15 through 20. How does that fit into, what did we say, to the poem? And so a poem has stanzas, but this is a very unique poem that we're going to look at. It's going to have almost like a scene. And for those of you that are familiar with one of my strategies, that if it's true that life happens at full speed and reading happens in slow motion, we can slow this poem down, this little mini play that we're about to see, and we can remember that below this hand on the opposite side, I have an arm, but I want you to notice that I went ahead and I drew an arrow saying, okay, based on the context of whatever happened before line 15 and whatever happened after line 15, we're going to look at this. If you look here on my ties, everything in a passage ties together, everything in a poem, everything in a play, everything in an editing and revising passage ties together. And so if you see here, I have the colors yellow, red, and green. Red for where the question is, and sometimes yellow, do you need to go back? Green, do you need to go forward and see the entire context? Because if we can role play, we can remember that actors remember more story sequence, actors remember more sections, more summaries, more selections, more stanzas, more scenes. If you act out any little scenes that are able to be acted out, you'll be able to remember them because they'll be coming to life right in front of you. Okay, so on the bottom of the read-vising, it does say that on the arm, actors remember more story sequence, more setting, more, what else did we say? More sections, summaries, selections, stanza, scene. Some of it, yes. And all they're asking about was some of it, but we had to compare it in the context of the entire poem. So what I did was I have the section in red, well, pink, that they asked us about. And I want you to notice that on its own, it doesn't even mention the author. And so if we're going to find out how these lines play a role in this ride that Sybil Ludington took, we better see it in the context. So I underlined the first part yellow, the middle part red, that we're going to be keying in on how important is this, what function do these lines play in the context of the content of the entire play. So I am going to, because I'm by myself, I'm going to use Automatopoeia, and I'm going to do my own role playing my own acting of the person arriving into town on a horse. I'm going to role play the colonel here and the daughter and the father talking with each other. So here we go. Sound of the horseman riding hard. Clatter of hoofs in the manor yard. Feet on the steps. And a knock resounding as a fist struck wood with a mighty pounding. So you can imagine you could have one of your students pounding on the door. The door is flung open. A voice is heard. Dunbury burning. I rode with word. Fully half of the town's gone, and the British are coming on. Send a messenger, get our men. His message finished the horseman then staggered wearily to a chair and fell exhausted in slumber there. So his role is done. And so you can see a picture of this messenger barely making it alive before he fell into a chair in slumber. And slumber is a synonym for almost sleeping. The colonel muttered, "And who, my friend, is the messenger I can send? Your strength is spent and you cannot ride. And then you know not the countryside. I cannot go, for my duty's clear. When my men come in, they must find me here. There's devil a man on the place tonight to warn my troopers to come and fight. Then who is my messenger to be?" Said Sybil Ludington. "You have me." "You," said the colonel, and grimly smiles. "You, my daughter, you're just a child." "Child," cried Sybil. "Why, I'm 16. My mind's alert and my senses keen. I know where the trails and the railways are, and I can gallop as fast as far as any masculine rider can. You want a messenger? I'm your man." And I don't need to go on. I can tell now why those lines were there. The colonel's heart was aglow with pride. "Spoke like a soldier, ride, girl, ride. Ride with the devil, ride like sin. Summon my slumbering troopers in. I know when duty is to be done, that I can depend on a Ludington." So when you look back, now that I've acted out the scene that they were asking us about, it wasn't enough to find out just on those 6 lines alone. Remember when I drew, I'm going to show you, if you look only at what they asked us about, lines 15 and 20, there's not enough information to see the context of the question that they asked us about. Get you there. A lot of tough questions. So the question said, how do lines 15 through 20 function in the Sybil Ludington's ride? Well, they create a sinister tone. Well, that was the colonel saying to the messenger he can't do it, and neither can he. There's nothing sinister about that. It's more despair, confusion, discouragement. Who's going to be able to warn the town, warn the people that the British are coming? So sinister, if you were to look it up, I did, and it's a harmful, evil thing, that something's happening or something will happen. And so those lines alone weren't the sinister tone, it's the despair and the worry. And so I think the ones who chose this, they were like right away, oh, yes, something evil is about to happen. Well, if they were to read before, they're going to see, oh, it's to establish the reasons that Sybil must ride. There's Sybil, whose name is mentioned in the title, the topic of our paper. And so that could be our reason. How do they function? They tell us why with examples that Sybil must ride. But if you read on in the green section, we can see all of her abilities and we can contrast them to, we can compare and contrast the messenger to Sybil and see the reasons that she must be the one who rides. They explain that the colonel is angry at the messenger. No, he's just discouraged. And so I always make a little heart around emotions. Angry at the messenger? No. The messenger is practically unconscious, probably barely able to function. They introduce the danger the characters are experiencing. In those lines alone, it's only talking about the colonel being worried because the messenger can't go and that he has to stay there. So it's only about the reasons the messenger can't go and the colonel can't go. And to introduce danger, once you say something dangerous, that's an opinion, and that opinion was never expressed in there. And so if you do the rewind and the fast forward, the answer that fits best in this question is letter G. So we read the question, we read the lines in the passage, but whenever we read back a little bit and read forward, even if you would have read just a little bit more, you would have seen enough to notice it was Sybil's responsibility because she had the capability to ride a horse. She knew the area. She said that she was just as strong. And so when you compare and contrast Sybil to the messenger, you can clearly see that G was the best choice. But as you see in the answer choices in Texas, only 41% of the kids got it right. So we have to be careful whenever they ask you about a section, a stanza, a scene, make sure you see words like function in the play, because the play is the entire passage, the entire selection. And so we have to make sure that the students remember to rewind and fast forward the play so that they can see the parts that are relevant. The reason in this case why Sybil had to be the one that would ride. So I hope you liked my role playing. I did that a lot with my students. I think that all you need in your classroom is 3 students in this case that would have been willing to act it out. Now, because this is a release test, this is only being shown to teachers, and I don't want you to show this to your students. But if you have a play where there's some characters speaking, then use this opportunity to show your students how you can see the progression of the plot building so that we do find out why this little girl has to be the one who rides to warn of the British coming. So please like the video on my YouTube page. Subscribe if you get a chance. Go ahead and click like and share with your teachers' friends. This is not the way, but it's a way to teach. And the monkeys that I showed you, they come 12 for $1 at the Dollar Tree. And so you'll notice they all look like the shape of an S, as in sentences or stanzas or scene or section. And so that's the cool thing about that S that we saw in the middle of the hand. It could be a summary, selection, scene, stanza. So, see ya.